I rode into Dusty Creek to buy rope and salt. I left with a woman nobody wanted, and the biggest fight of my life, Arizona Territory, summer of 1875. The sun hung like a branding iron over the town square, baking the dirt streets until they cracked like old leather. Heat rose from the ground in shimmering waves, turning distant buildings into wavering mirages. I'd been on the trail since dawn, pushing through country so dry that even the cactus looked thirsty, and my throat felt like I'd been swallowing sand for a week. My name is Ethan Cole, 38 years old, former Union Cavalry, 3rd Regiment. I fought at Antietam, Gettysburg, and a dozen smaller battles whose names that history has already forgotten. I've killed men in war, watched the light leave their eyes while my hands were still warm with their blood. I've buried my wife and daughter in peacetime, lowered them into the cold Arizona earth while the preacher spoke words that meant nothing. And I've learned that the second kind of death hurts worse than the first. I tied my horse, a bay mare named Copper, outside the general store and swung down from the saddle. My boots hit the wooden boardwalk with a hollow thud. That's when I heard it, a voice flat and bored, rattling off words like he was reading from a grocery list. Apache, purebred, strong back, cooks well, sews better, works leather, 20 years old, good teeth. Silas Barrow stood on a wooden platform in the center of the square, chewing tobacco like it was the only thing keeping him alive. He was a fat man with small eyes and hands that had never known honest work. Behind him, a young woman stood motionless in the brutal sun. Dark skin baked by years under the desert sky, black hair falling past her shoulders like a river of night, eyes fixed on the distant horizon like she could escape through it if she stared hard enough. I'd seen that look before, in the mirror. Every morning for 3 years, a rancher stepped forward, fat belly straining against his vest, soft hands that probably hadn't held anything heavier than a whiskey glass. The kind of man who'd never worked a day that made him sweat. Can she bear children? Silas spat brown juice onto the boards. The glob landed near the woman's bare feet, but she didn't flinch, didn't move at all. No, sir, she's barren. Took a fever when she was young. Killed any chance of babies. The rancher turned and walked away without another word. Just like that, like she was a broken plow he didn't want to haul home. I watched this happen twice more. 3 men, 3 times the same question, 3 times the same answer, 3 backs turned, 3 pairs of boots walking away, 3 more cuts to whatever was left of her dignity. 7 days, I learned later. She'd been standing on that platform for 7 days straight. 7 days in the sun. 7 days of the same question asked by different mouths. 7 days of being told she was worthless because her body couldn't do the one thing men in this territory valued. Something stirred in my chest. Not pity. I'd run out of pity years ago. Recognition, maybe. The understanding of what it feels like to be measured and found wanting. I walked over, my spurs jingled with each step, cutting through the quiet murmur of the square. Not sure why I did it. Maybe because I recognized something in the way she held herself. Beaten but not broken. Exhausted but not empty. Still standing when everything in the world was telling her to fall. How much? Silas blinked, his small eyes widening with surprise. Tobacco juice dribbled down his chin. $100. But I should warn you, mister. She can't. Can you ride? I wasn't talking to Silas. I was talking to her. She met my eyes. First time she'd looked directly at anyone all day. Her gaze was steady, searching, trying to figure out what kind of man I was, what kind of hell I might be offering. I broke wild horses since I was 8 years old. Her voice was stronger than I expected, roughened by the desert, but not defeated. Can you track? I can follow a rabbit across bare stone. I can read the wind and know what passed through a canyon 3 days ago. You afraid of hard work? Something flickered in her eyes. Not hope, not yet, but something that might become hope if given half a chance. No, sir. I've never been afraid of work. I pulled out a roll of bills from my coat pocket, counted exactly 100. The paper was worn soft from handling, smelling of leather and horse sweat. I dropped them into Silas's outstretched palm. But sir, he sputtered, you should know she's barren. Can't give you children. Can't give you heirs. That's why nobody wants. I don't need a wife. My voice came out harder than I intended, hard enough to make Silas take a step backward. I need someone who can work a ranch, someone who won't run, someone who understands this land and isn't afraid of it. The square went quiet. Even the horses stopped their restless shifting. Everyone was watching now, the shopkeeper in his doorway, the women with their parasols, the old men on the porch of the saloon. I turned to her. Name's Ethan Cole. Got a ranch 3 days east of here, toward the Dragoon Mountains. 150 head of cattle, 20 horses. Work starts when the sun comes up and ends when it goes down. Food's simple, but there's always enough. You'll have your own room with a door that locks from the inside. I paused, letting the words settle like dust after a hard ride. I didn't buy you to be my wife or give me heirs. I bought you because I need help. No man can run a ranch alone, and I've been trying for 3 years, you understand? She nodded slowly. Something in her posture changed, shoulders dropping just slightly, the tension in her jaw releasing by a fraction. Yes, sir. Then let's go. I turned toward my horse. That's when I heard them coming. Hoofbeats. 4 horses riding fast from the north end of town. The sound was distinctive. Expensive horses with expensive shoes, ridden by men who didn't care about wearing them out. The man in front wore a black vest over a silk shirt and a rattlesnake skin hat that probably cost more than most men made in a year. Silver Remington revolver on his hip, polished until it gleamed like a mirror. Marcus Webb, richest landowner in the territory, and the man who'd been trying to take my ranch for 5 long years. Cole, he pulled up short, dust swirling around his horse's legs like brown smoke. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Never did. Been a while since you came to town. Heard you were shopping at Silas's little market. Not your business, Webb. His eyes slid past me to the woman on the platform, lingered there in a way that made my skin crawl. I'll give you triple, $300 right now, cash in hand. She's not for sale. Webb laughed. It was an ugly sound, like gravel scraping against tin. Everything's for sale, Cole. Land, cattle, people, even that broken-down ranch of yours. It's just a matter of finding the right price. The man beside him shifted in his saddle. Tall, lean, face like a hatchet blade. Pale eyes that looked at the world like it was already dead and just hadn't realized it yet. I knew him by reputation. They called him Blade Dawson. Fastest draw in 3 territories, maybe more. The story said he'd killed 30 men. The truth was probably worse. Dawson rested his hand on his gun. Casual, almost lazy, like he was thinking about scratching an itch. The air in the square changed, went thick and heavy, like before a thunderstorm. You want to test that theory? I kept my voice level. Calm, let my hand drift toward my own Colt. Right here, right now. Webb held up a hand. Dawson's fingers relaxed, but his eyes didn't. Not today, Cole. Town's too crowded. Too many witnesses. Webb smiled again, and this time there was something almost like anticipation in it. But soon, very soon, he wheeled his horse around and rode off, his men following like shadows trailing a storm cloud. The woman watched them go until they disappeared around the corner of the feed store. Who was that? Marcus Webb, biggest landowner in the territory. Owns about 30,000 acres and wants to own 30,000 more. Why does he want your ranch? Water. I've got the only creek in 50 miles that never runs dry, even in the worst drought. He controls that water. He controls every ranch, every farm, every living thing from here to the mountains. She was quiet for a moment, processing this. He'll come back. I checked the loads in my Winchester, then slid it back into the saddle scabbard. I know. And when he does, I'll be ready. Her name was Nala. She told me on the second day of riding, when the sun was low and the shadows stretched long across the desert floor like dark fingers reaching for the mountains. We'd stopped to water the horses at a creek that barely deserved the name, more mud than water, and she sat on a flat rock, looking up at the first stars appearing in the darkening sky. It means one who dances with stars in my mother's tongue. That was my name before the soldiers came, before they burned our village and killed everyone I loved. Her voice was steady, matter of fact, like she was describing the weather. But I heard the weight beneath the words, the years of carrying that memory alone. My grandmother gave me that name because I was born during a meteor shower. She said the stars were celebrating my arrival. A pause. She was one of the first to die. A soldier shot her while she was trying to protect the children. I didn't ask for more. Some stories aren't meant to be told all at once. Some stories take years to fully speak, each piece emerging when the teller is ready to release it. We reached Two Stars Ranch on the afternoon of the third day. The valley opened up below us like a green wound in the brown landscape. Two soft hills cradled a stretch of grassland that shouldn't have existed in this harsh country. The creek cut through the middle like a silver ribbon, catching the sunlight and throwing it back at the sky. That water comes from an underground spring, I explained. Feeds the creek year-round. Been flowing since before the Spanish came through, probably since before humans walked this land at all. The house stood solid but tired. 2 stories of weathered timber that I'd cut and hauled and nailed together with my own hands. It needed paint, needed repairs, needed the kind of attention only a woman's eye could provide. But it was mine, built on land I'd bought legally, defended with my own sweat and blood. And nobody, not Marcus Webb, not the territorial government, not God himself, was going to take it from me. That's thunder. I pointed to the corral where a black stallion paced like a caged storm. Coat dark as a moonless night. Eyes wild with something that wasn't quite anger, but wasn't quite sane either. Muscles rippling beneath his skin like coiled snakes. Nobody can get near him, not even me. I bought him 3 years ago from a man who swore he was the fastest horse in the territory. Might be true, but it doesn't matter much if nobody can ride him. Nala climbed down from her horse and walked toward the corral. No fear, no hesitation. Just that same calm she'd had on the auction block. Like she knew something the rest of the world didn't. She started humming, low and soft, an old melody in a language I didn't recognize. Apache, probably, or something even older. The kind of song that existed before written words, passed down through generations of people who understood things about the natural world that civilization had forgotten. Thunder stopped pacing. His ears swiveled toward her like he was trying to catch every note. He snorted once, twice, then walked to the fence and lowered his head. Nala reached out and touched his neck. He didn't flinch, didn't rear, just stood there, breathing deep, like he'd finally found something he'd been searching for. I'd owned that horse for 3 years. He'd thrown every ranch hand who tried to ride him, bit a farrier so bad the man lost 2 fingers and nearly lost his arm to infection, kicked a hole through the stable wall when we tried to shoe him, and here was this woman singing him quiet like he was a newborn foal meeting its mother. "How did you do that?" She looked back at me, her hand still resting on Thunder's mane. In the golden afternoon light, she looked almost peaceful. Horses don't hear words, they hear hearts. This one has been hurt by men who didn't understand him. He needs gentleness, not force. That was the moment I knew I'd made the right choice. Whatever happened next, Whatever Webb threw at us, I'd made the right choice. 2 weeks passed, then 3, then a month. We fell into a rhythm as natural as breathing. Up before dawn, when the sky was still gray and the stars were fading. Feed the horses, check the cattle in the lower pasture, mend fences, haul water, repair equipment. Work until our hands bled and our backs screamed for mercy. Nala learned fast. Faster than any hand I'd ever hired in 10 years of ranching. She could read the land like it was whispering secrets meant only for her ears. Could tell when a storm was coming by the way the birds flew, when a predator was nearby the way the cattle shifted. Could track a stray calf through terrain that would have had me wandering for hours. More than that, she understood the silence. On a ranch, you learn that silence isn't empty. It's full of information, the creak of a fence post that needs replacing, the change in the wind that signals weather, the particular quiet that means a predator is stalking your herd. Nala understood this in her bones. We could work side by side for hours without speaking a word and communicate more than most people do in a week of conversation. Then the first attack came. Gunshots. 3 of them. Sharp and sudden, cutting through the midnight darkness like knife blades. I was out of bed and grabbing my Winchester before my eyes fully adjusted to the dark. 20 years of soldiering had given me instincts that never slept, reflexes that activated before conscious thought caught up. Through the window I saw flames, the hay barn fully ablaze, orange light painting the darkness, smoke billowing up toward the stars. 3 figures on horseback, torches in hand, already riding hard for the northern hills. I threw open the window and fired twice. The Winchester kicked against my shoulder like an old friend. One rider jerked and slumped forward in his saddle, then slid sideways and hit the ground. The other 2 vanished into the darkness before I could get another shot off. Nala was beside me before I realized she'd moved. Fully dressed, boots on, like she'd been expecting this. "The barn," she said. "We might still save some of it." We fought the fire until dawn, hauling water from the creek in every bucket we could find, beating at flames with wet blankets until our lungs burned and our skin blistered from the heat. Saved most of the hay, but lost enough to hurt. A third of our winter supply gone in smoke and ash. When the sun came up, Nala walked the perimeter while I sat on the porch, coughing soot out of my lungs. She came back with her findings. 3 horses, heavy animals, well-fed. The shoes have cross-pattern nails. I've only seen that style at one stable in the territory. Webb's. She nodded. I rode into town that morning, fury burning in my chest, hotter than the fire we'd just fought. Found Sheriff Tom Harker sitting behind his desk, cleaning a pistol that looked like it hadn't been fired in years, maybe decades. "Need to report an attack on my ranch. Arson. Webb's men burned my hay barn." Harker didn't look up from his gun. "Got any proof it was Webb's people?" "Hoof prints, custom shoes from his stable. And I shot one of them. There'll be a body out there with a bullet from my rifle in his back." "That's not proof of who sent them. Could be anyone. Drifters, bandits. This is rough country, Cole." I leaned over his desk, close enough to smell the coffee on his breath and the fear underneath it. 3 riders at midnight with torches isn't an accident, Tom. It isn't drifters looking for easy money. It's a message. He finally met my eyes, and I saw it clearly, written in the shame he was trying to hide behind his lawman's badge. "I can't help you, Cole. Not without solid evidence. My hands are tied." I understood then. Webb had bought him, probably bought him years ago when Harker was still young enough to tell himself that taking bribes was just practical politics. "Fine," I straightened up. "But when they come back, and they will, don't expect me to come asking for permission. I'll handle it myself." 3 weeks later, they hit us again, harder this time. Nala and I were driving 50 head of cattle to the market in Tucson. Good cattle, strong, healthy, fat from summer grazing, worth enough money to carry us through winter with plenty left over for spring breeding stock. The canyon narrowed as we pushed the herd through. High walls on both sides, loose shale underfoot, perfect ambush territory. I should have known better, should have taken the long way around. Added 2 days to the journey, but I was tired and angry and made the mistake of thinking Webb wouldn't be bold enough to strike in broad daylight. Gunfire erupted from both ridges. 6 men, maybe more, firing down at us from positions we couldn't see. I threw myself off my horse, pulling Nala down with me. We scrambled behind a boulder as bullets sparked off the stone inches from our heads, filling the air with rock chips and the acrid smell of gunpowder. "How many?" she shouted over the chaos. "Too many," I fired back, dropped one man from the left ridge, saw him tumble forward and fall 30 feet to the canyon floor, got another one trying to relocate to a better position. But for every one I hit, 2 more seemed to take his place. A shadow moved behind us. One of them had circled around. I spun, raising my rifle, knowing I was too slow, knowing I was about to die in this god-forsaken canyon with 50 cattle as witnesses. Nala was faster. Her knife, a wicked blade she kept hidden in her boot, caught the man across the throat before he could pull his trigger. He went down making sounds no human should make, hands clutching at the wound. But there were too many of them. We couldn't hold this position. "The cattle," I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "We have to let them go." Those 50 head represented 6 months of work. 6 months of early mornings and late nights, of broken fences and difficult births, of protecting them from predators and nursing them through sickness. But dead men don't spend money, and dead men don't get revenge. Now! We run now. We broke for the horses, made it maybe 20 yards. That's when fire exploded through my left shoulder. The impact spun me around, threw me face first into the dirt. The world went white, then red, then narrowed to a point of agony so intense I couldn't breathe. I would have died there, bled out in that canyon with my face in the dust. But Nala wouldn't let me. She hauled me up with strength that seemed impossible for her size, threw me across Thunder's back, the horse that no one could ride, who stood steady as a rock while bullets flew around him, and mounted behind me. She rode like death itself was chasing us. Maybe it was. That night she dug the bullet out of my shoulder. We'd found shelter in a cave a mile off the main trail, a place Nala had spotted during our journey, filed away in her memory in case we needed it. Smart. The kind of thinking that came from a lifetime of survival. She heated her hunting knife in the fire until the blade glowed orange. Then, while I bit down on a leather strap hard enough to crack my teeth, she cut into my flesh and extracted the chunk of lead that had been trying to kill me. I'd been shot before, twice in the war, once at Gettysburg, once at a skirmish so small it didn't even have a name, once more in a bar fight in Abilene, when a drunk cowboy decided he didn't like the way I looked at him. This hurt worse than all of them combined. But I didn't scream. Soldiers don't scream. Men who want to live don't scream. I just bit that leather and let the tears run down my face and waited for it to be over. When it was done, when she'd stitched me up with thread from her sewing kit and packed the wound with herbs she'd gathered, she sat back and looked at me with something like respect. "You saved me from that platform. You just saved my life." I managed to get the words out through gritted teeth. "We're even." "No." Her voice was quiet but firm, carrying a weight that simple words shouldn't have. "We are partners now. What is yours is mine to protect. What is mine is yours." I looked at her, really looked, saw the strength that had kept her standing for 7 days while men walked away, saw the fire that had kept her alive when her entire world burned, saw the loyalty of someone who had lost everything and would never let it happen again. "Partners," I agreed. 1 week later, Marcus Webb came to my ranch alone. White flag, both hands visible, raised high. riding slow up the path to the ranch house like he was approaching a church instead of a battlefield. I met him on the porch, Winchester in my hands, Nala watching from the window with a rifle of her own. I'm here to make you a final offer, Cole. A generous offer. $5,000 for the ranch. That's 10 times what this land is actually worth. No, think about it. You lost 50 head last week. Lost a third of your hay before that. Winter's coming fast, and it's going to be a hard one. The old-timers are already talking about how the birds are flying south early. Webb smiled, all teeth and no warmth. You'll starve before spring. Or freeze. Either way, you'll be dead by February. Still no. The smile faded. Something cold and reptilian slithered behind his eyes. 7 days, Cole. I'm giving you 7 days to reconsider. Then I'll be back with 20 men. Hard men, men who know how to make problems disappear. He leaned forward in his saddle. You can sell and walk away with money in your pocket, or you can die and I'll take the land anyway. Your choice. He turned his horse and rode away without looking back. Nala came out onto the porch, rifle still in her hands. What do we do? I started loading the Winchester, one round at a time, each click of brass sliding into the magazine sounding like a promise. We get ready for war. 7 days to prepare. 7 days to turn a ranch into a fortress. We dug trenches around the house, 3 feet deep, filled with whatever we could find for cover. Piled sandbags at every window, leaving gaps just wide enough to shoot through. Reinforced the doors with iron bars salvaged from the barn. Mapped every approach, every blind spot, every rock and tree and depression where a man could take cover. 2 Winchesters, 1 double-barrel shotgun, 1 Colt revolver, 200 rounds of ammunition divided between positions. It would have to be enough. I taught Nala to shoot, properly shoot, not just point and pull the trigger. She learned fast, faster than any soldier I'd trained during the war. By the 4th day, she could hit a tin can at 50 yards. By the 6th, she was better than most men I'd served with. On the 5th day, riders appeared on the southern ridge. I raised my rifle, finger finding the trigger. Nala grabbed my arm. Wait, look at how they're riding. 3 men, moving slow, hands raised high. Cole! The lead rider's voice carried across the valley, rough and tired. Don't shoot! We're here to help! Jake Morrison, Bill Tucker, Old Pete from the trading post. Small ranchers, every one of them. Men who'd been squeezed by Marcus Webb for years. Men with nothing left to lose. Webb took my father's land last spring, Jake said when they reached the house. He was maybe 30, lean and weathered, with eyes that had seen too much grief for someone his age. Burned our fence lines, poisoned our well, killed 2 horses and a milk cow. Pa held on as long as he could, but Webb's men kept coming back, kept destroying things. Eventually, Pa couldn't take it anymore. Sold for pennies on the dollar. Died 3 months later. Doc said it was his heart, but I know better. Webb killed him as sure as if he'd pulled a trigger. Same story everywhere, Bill added. He was younger, maybe 25, but his eyes carried the same weight. Webb controls the water, controls the law, controls everything within 50 miles. If he takes your ranch, none of us are safe. He'll own the territory. Old Pete just spat tobacco juice and checked his rifle. He was 60 if he was a day, face weathered like leather left too long in the sun, hands gnarled but steady. He'd been in the territory longer than almost anyone, remembered when it was nothing but Apache land and empty sky. Figured we'd rather die fighting than live begging, and I've been wanting to put a bullet in Marcus Webb for about 15 years now. 5 men against 20. Still crazy odds, but less crazy than 2. Dawn. Day 7. They came with the sunrise. I watched them through my rifle scope, as they spread across the northern ridge like a dark stain on the morning sky. 18 riders, maybe 20, hard to count with the sun behind them. Webb sat in the center on a gray stallion, silver Remington catching the light. Blade Dawson flanked his right side, patient and still as a rattlesnake coiled in cool shade. I counted guns, assessed formations, noted the riders who sat easy in their saddles, the experienced ones, the dangerous ones, and the ones who fidgeted nervously. The fidgeters would break first when things got bloody. Webb raised his hand. The line stopped. "Last chance, Cole!" His voice echoed across the valley, bouncing off the hills. "Walk away now, you and your Apache whore, and I'll let you live. You can start over somewhere else." I didn't answer, just settled the Winchester against my shoulder and waited. Webb dropped his hand. They charged. The first wave came straight up the main path. 8 men riding hard, guns blazing, screaming like demons released from hell. Stupid. Arrogant. Exactly what I expected from hired guns who'd never faced anyone willing to fight back. "Hold," I murmured. Jake and Bill on my left, Pete and Nala on my right, everyone steady, everyone waiting. "Hold, hold, now!" 5 rifles spoke as one. The lead rider flew backward off his horse like he'd been yanked by an invisible rope, dead before he hit the ground. Then another fell, then 2 more. Horses screamed, their riders tumbling into the dust. The charge shattered like a wave breaking against rocks. "Reload!" I worked the Winchester's lever, smooth and fast. Brass casings clinked on the wooden floor, glinting gold in the morning light. Return fire hammered the sandbags. Wood splintered, glass shattered. A bullet punched through the wall 6 inches from my head, showering me with splinters. I found the shooter through the smoke and dropped him with my next round. Webb was screaming orders from the ridge, his voice barely audible over the constant gunfire, splitting his forces, flanking maneuvers, trying to surround us with superior numbers. The man knew tactics, Confederate officer probably, someone who'd learned to move men around a battlefield. "Jake, Bill, watch the left ridge. They're trying to circle. Pete, Nala, cover the east approach." Nala moved to the east window without hesitation. Cool, calm, like she'd been doing this her whole life. Maybe in a way she had. The fight became chaos. Gun smoke filled the air until I could barely see. The noise was constant. Rifle cracks, pistol shots, the thunder of hooves, men screaming orders and curses and death rattles. The copper smell of blood mixed with burned powder. 2 hours passed, maybe 3. Time stopped meaning anything. There was only the next target, the next shot, the next reload. Then I heard it from behind the house. "Ethan!" Nala's voice sharp with warning. Blade Dawson moved like smoke through a keyhole. He'd found the back way, a gap in our defenses I thought was too narrow for a man to squeeze through. I was wrong. He came through the kitchen door, silent as death, cleared the hallway before anyone knew he was inside. Shot old Pete through the ribs from 10 feet away. The old man went down hard, blood spraying, but still cursing, still trying to raise his rifle, still alive. Jake spun to face the new threat. Too slow. Dawson's second shot caught him in the thigh. He collapsed against the wall, rifle clattering from his hands, face going white with shock. Bill rushed in from the front room. Brave but stupid, Dawson pistol whipped him across the temple with a sound like a hammer hitting meat. Bill dropped and didn't move. I came through the doorway and found Dawson standing in my living room, smoke curling from his silver revolver, surrounded by my fallen allies. "Cole," he smiled like we were old friends meeting for drinks. Calm as a Sunday morning in church. "Been wanting to meet you proper. Heard a lot of stories about the famous Ethan Cole. Dawson. They say you were fast, back in the war. Say you killed 12 men at Antietam with nothing but a Colt and a bayonet. 13. His smile widened. There was no fear in it. just professional interest. Let's see if the stories are true. We stood maybe 15 feet apart, close quarters. Either of us could draw and fire before the other finished blinking, but that's not how it works with men like us. It's about the moment, the stillness before the storm. Reading your opponent's eyes, watching for the twitch in their fingers, the shift in their weight, the almost invisible tension in their shoulder that signals the draw. 2 heartbeats passed, maybe 3. His hand moved. Mine moved faster. The Colt bucked in my hand. Once. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space, echoing off the walls like thunder. Dawson looked down at the hole in his chest. Center mass, right through the heart. Perfect shot. He looked back up at me, and that smile was still there. Fading now, but still there. Fast, he whispered. Blood bubbled on his lips. Real fast. He fell. I stepped over his body and walked back to the front of the house. Outside, the battle was turning. With Dawson dead, Webb's remaining men had lost their nerve. They'd come here expecting easy money, easy killing, a simple job against a lone rancher and his Indian woman. Instead, they'd watched half their number fall and their best gun disappear into a house and never come out. The ones still alive were retreating, riding hard for the ridge without looking back. Some of them threw down their guns as they ran. Others didn't even bother, just fled like the hounds of hell were chasing them. Webb sat alone on his horse, watching his empire crumble around him. His face had gone the color of old ash. "This isn't over, Cole." His voice cracked. Desperate now. Pathetic. "You hear me? This isn't..." I raised my Winchester, put a round in the dirt an inch from his horse's hooves. The animal reared, screaming. Webb grabbed the saddle horn with both hands, barely managing to stay mounted. "Yes, it is." He ran, like the coward he'd always been beneath the fancy clothes and the silver gun. We buried the dead that afternoon. Their dead, not ours. 8 of Webb's men lay in shallow graves on the hillside. I marked each one with a simple wooden cross. Even murderers deserve that much. Blade Dawson I buried separate from the others, at the top of the ridge where you could see the whole valley. A killer, yes. A man who'd sold his gun to evil men for evil purposes. But a professional who'd met his end standing, not running. He deserved that much respect. Our side fared better than we had any right to expect. Jake would walk with a limp for the rest of his life. The bullet had grazed the bone, and the doc in town said it would never heal quite right. Old Pete had a new scar across his ribs and a story he'd tell in every saloon from here to California, getting longer and more dramatic each time. Bill woke up with a headache that lasted 3 days and a bruise the size of an apple, but nothing permanent. We'd won, 5 against 20, and we'd won. That night, we sat on the porch and watched the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and red, like the heavens themselves were celebrating our victory. "What happens to Webb now?" Jake asked, wincing as he shifted his bandaged leg. "He's finished. Lost Dawson, lost half his crew, lost any reputation he had for being untouchable. Word spreads fast in this territory. After today, no gunman worth his salt will work for Marcus Webb." I paused, watching the last sliver of sun disappear behind the mountains. "He'll sell off his land piece by piece over the next few years, trying to maintain appearances. Eventually, he'll leave the territory entirely, probably head to California and try to reinvent himself. Men like Webb always do." Nala sat beside me, cleaning her knife, the same blade that had saved my life twice now. Her hands were steady, her face calm. She stood at the east window for 4 hours, picking off anyone who tried to flank us, never flinching, never hesitating. 3 confirmed kills, probably more. "What happens now?" she asked. I reached into my jacket and pulled out an envelope I'd been carrying for 3 weeks, waiting for the right moment. "Rode to the county seat while you all were digging trenches. Talked to a lawyer, a real one, educated back east, not one of Webb's pocket men. Cost me $50, but it was worth every cent. Inside were two documents, official, stamped and sealed by the territorial government. First one is your freedom papers, legal and binding, registered with the federal government. Doesn't matter what happens to me. No one can ever claim ownership of you again. You're a free woman under the law, same as anyone else. She took the paper with trembling hands, stared at the words like she was memorizing each one. The second document says you own half this ranch. The land, the cattle, the horses, half of everything we built and everything we'll build in the future. Your name is on the deed, right next to mine. Ethan, I can't. You bled for this place. You fought for it. You killed for it. I met her eyes, wanting her to understand. That makes it yours as much as mine. Maybe more. She was quiet for a long moment. The first stars were appearing now, faint points of light in the darkening sky. I don't need papers to know this is my home. No, but papers make sure no one can ever take it away from you. Not Webb, not the government, not anyone. Morning came soft and golden, the way it only does in the high desert after violence has passed. I stood on the ridge overlooking Two Stars Ranch as the first light spilled across the valley. The cattle grazed in the lower pasture, fat and peaceful, unaware of how close they'd come to having a different owner. Thunder ran circles in the corral, black mane flying, finally free of whatever demons had haunted him. Smoke rose from the chimney where Nala was making breakfast. I could smell bacon and coffee from here. Jake and the others had ridden home the night before, but they'd be back. We all knew it now. Alone, any of us could be picked off. Together, we were something else entirely. Not just neighbors, not just allies. Family. The kind you choose for yourself because blood isn't always enough. People ask me sometimes why I didn't sell, why I didn't take Webb's money and walk away while I still had the chance. I tell them the same thing every time. Some things can't be bought. Honor, freedom, a piece of land you can call your own, the right to stand up straight and look any man in the eye, the knowledge that when you die, you'll leave something behind that matters. Marcus Webb spent his whole life believing everything had a price, that people were just commodities, like cattle or land or water rights. That's why he lost. That's why men like him always lose in the end. Two Stars Ranch still stands today. I named it for my daughter Stella, who loved to count the stars before she fell asleep, and for Nala, who dances with them in her dreams. Two stars, not shining alone in the darkness, but together, guiding each other, protecting each other, making light where there was none. That's how we survived. That's how we'll always survive.